haven't spoken to my good friend in a long time, Jonathan Marshall, out there now. He's big time doing TV, Fox 13 in Memphis, covers the NBA. He's all over the place. I tell you, I feel like it was like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago when I had you go and run and get me some coffee.
Man, time has flown by, Q. I was on the other side of the booth with you, trying to learn this thing.
Actually, I never asked you to get me coffee. That's true, though.
Never.
Yeah.
You actually allowed me to do real work on my writing. You were my first internship, actually, over there, so in Delaware. So definitely, thank you for getting my start. And now I'm here in Memphis, as you said. So
you enjoying yourself?
Definitely appreciate it. I'm enjoying it. After spending a few years in small towns in Texas and Mississippi. You can imagine what being in Memphis is like for a young man like myself. So.
You know what it is? You always have the thing is in this industry, you always have to make the moves, right? You have to, no matter what. It's very rare. Sometimes people just roll into something, but the guys that when you can make the moves and go from different places, I think it kind of motivates you and inspires you and makes you a little more hungrier to, get your cup of coffee at that place and then pretty much get the hell out of there and move on to bigger and better things. So, but now, congrats, man. You're doing a real good job and really proud of you, and keep up the good work. And
I appreciate it, Q.
Just watch yourself out there in Memphis, right? So.
Oh, trust me. I got you. If I ever need some advice, I'll definitely tap into the OG, Q. I appreciate it. I know you have some experience.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some. We'll switch gears. A little NBA talk for a couple moments. All right, what's your thoughts on what's going on with the Sixers? And let's get to the trade first. The move, you get rid of Dario and Covington, and you bring over Jimmy Butler, who it seems like right away he's been a godsend with this team. He's got the right kind of dog in him. He's a clutch player. A good change of scenery. What was your overall thoughts just on that move by the Sixers, bringing in a guy that has the known ability to score, and he's clutch?
Well, it's funny, because prior to the trade, I was talking with people about any moves that Philly could make, and Jimmy Butler was brought up, and I was kind of shaky on it, given his history and the reputation, in the locker room in Chicago and even in Minnesota. So I was sort of questioning how that would even look in the locker room with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. How would those personalities clash? But then looking at the trade, looking at where this team was, looking at how they fared against the likes of Milwaukee and Toronto and Boston, I said, you know what? This isn't too bad. Looking at it in a basketball sense, this is exactly what the team needed, right? A guy that not only that can defend some of the top wingers in this league, but also a guy you can give the ball to in crunch time, as he's shown, and get you a bucket. So much pressure has been put on Joel Embiid to be that offense. Ben is not going to shoot. So who else are you going to rely on that wing? And to be frank, Robert Covington wasn't that guy.
No.
He was streaky as a shooter. He provided some things defensively, but he was still getting destroyed by Tatum and Jaylen Brown in the playoffs last time I checked. And Dario seemed like once Joel and Ben got back into the rotation, he really couldn't find his way after that strong year that he had, his rookie year. So to me, it was a high risk, low risk, high reward type of situation for Philly at this point.
Last night in that game, they destroyed the Knicks. The Knicks are rebuilding. Listen, they're not even.
I'm not even going to joke with you about that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it.
It was so bad the other day when I had the NBA channel on and they were showing the '93 playoffs, and I'm like, even then, I can't even win a playoff game against the Bulls. Well, '93 they finally got to the finals, but it was still they still had to fight and get 7 games. But last night, Embiid's still on the floor. That game's an absolute blowout, and look at all the minutes that he's logging. Is this a situation where Brown's trying to placate him to get his minutes and get his points, or is there really a need for him in that situation? I know a couple other games, look, crunch time, you want him out on the floor, but last night, he's averaging 34 minutes a game.
Yeah, in those situations, I don't, I'm already, I jump every time I see Embiid take a fall to the ground, so in given his situation, what his body has had to go through over the last couple years, if you can take away minutes from Embiid, you definitely want to see that, but I love what I've been seeing from him so far this year. My gripe with him over the last year or so has been his conditioning. And it seems like that is slowly improved over the last few months. But anytime you have a lead like that, I don't want to see Joel out there. I don't want to take any risks, because if he goes down, then it's pretty much a wrap.
How much pressure is on Brown this year for this team as a whole to make a deep run into the playoffs? Because I know everyone thinks, he's a good guy and he's, star hunting and star developing and all that. And, the players seem to resonate and respond to him. But you also look at from the X's and O's standpoints. You go back to the playoffs, doesn't know when to call a timeout, doesn't know when to, basically settle down the guys, the shuffling of the lineups. I think a lot of it leaves a lot of the fan base a little soured, even though some will say, well, there's something to be said that he hung around and he never quit on the team when they were basically tanking. And I give him a ton of credit for that. But I still think the jury's out on Brett Brown.
Yeah, Q. I mean, I'm on the side that I think a change would be best for this team at the head coaching position. And the last straw was the series against Boston. That was a series that this team could have easily went the other way. If you look back, just late game situations, out of timeout situations, having Joel get the ball at the 3-point line instead of just setting him up at the post, rotations, just little things like you mentioned, the X's and O's. And I think obviously he has bought himself time because he was here through the process years.
Yes.
He was there through the Henry Sims and the Hollis Thompsons of the world. I'm bringing up some names that I'm sure a lot of Sixers fans don't want to hear again. KJ McDaniels, you know the names. I can reel them off. So, of course, he's brought himself some time. But at the end of the day, I look back and I say, can I look back at a time where Sixers W, and I can say that was Brett Brown did a great job coaching. That was a Brett Brown coaching victory. And I think they win despite of Brett Brown. There's nothing that makes me say, okay, obviously Brad Stevens has the advantage. Even in Toronto, I think Nick Nurse, you can see the impact that he has had on that Toronto offense. Indiana, the improvements that they have made. All these coaches that I can use as examples, you can see the impact that they've made. And I just don't see it with Brett Brown. He has the talent around him, and I don't see his imprint on this team as a coach.
It's funny because Kawhi Leonard, we know he's a great player. And I thought the Sixers should have, I was a little indifferent if he would be wearing a Sixers uniform. But you can't dispute the impact that he's making with Toronto. That gamble, that's a big gamble, and it's paying off. Now, I know they had their little lull where they hit a skid losing to the Celtics and the Pistons and the Pelicans, but boom, they've just been lights out over the last week and a half. This team's 18-4 right now. Do they have staying power? Do you believe they can keep up this pace?
I believe so. I actually caught them. They played Memphis, took down Memphis the other night, actually, and just watching them up close. This is a different team. Because the past few years, it was the Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan show. It was ISO basketball. Now, and I mentioned Nick Nurse, their coach, you have guys. I mean, it's a free-flowing offense. Guys are now encouraged to take the open shot. It's not so much isolation heavy. So you have a guy like Pascal Siakam who has been impressive. He impressed me up close and personal this week. He's the most improved player candidate. Fred VanVleet. I mean, you got guys that coming off the bench that are stepping up. Serge Ibaka has experienced a resurgence. Kyle Lowry has always been solid, but in Kawhi Leonard, you have a bona fide top 5 NBA player when fully healthy, and his impact on that team has been special. But you definitely got to look at the way this team is playing offensively, and LeBron's out of the Eastern Conference as well. I think Toronto is a legit threat right now in the East.
Yeah, and I think when you look at some of the better teams over the last several years in the NBA, and the teams that typically win championships or make deep runs in the playoffs, it's all about the bench. It's all about the depth on the bench. We saw that with Golden State for so many years, even Cleveland with a couple of streaky shooters coming off the bench. Obviously, the Boston Celtics. I'm looking around the Eastern Conference, and you mentioned there's no LeBron. This is why I think it's for teams like Boston, Toronto, the Sixers. I know it's still early. I don't know how much I'm buying into teams like Indiana and Detroit. And we know Boston's struggling. We know where, Washington, they don't know what the heck they're going to do with Beal or Wall as well. And then you got kind of the afterthoughts. But this is a year where, because Boston's slow out of the gate, because Toronto has a great start of the season, you can't really figure out who the real legit team is right now. And I get it. We're only 23, 24 games into the season, but the Eastern Conference, LeBron's not there, so Cleveland's an afterthought. But then it's almost like throw a dart. You got 2 or 3, 4 teams that are probably going to compete for that top seed.
It's tough, too, because, at one point, obviously, beginning of the year, Boston was the bona fide number one, right? With Gordon and Kyrie coming back. in addition to what Tatum showed last year and Jaylen Brown, so you figured those are number one guys. So they start off slow. There was a point I thought Milwaukee was the team to look out for in the East. They've sort of tailed off, and now Toronto is getting back up there at that top spot. So, I mean, you're right. In the Eastern Conference is, to me, it's pretty open. You can take those four teams, Toronto, Milwaukee, Philly, and Boston. At this point, I mean, who's to say if one has the greater advantage? It just depends on the week, right? You look at Philly, you have the best center in the Eastern Conference, if not the league. So that's one advantage you have. You have a guy in Jimmy Butler. You have a guy in Ben Simmons. So they have three bona fide stars. So you look at Toronto, you have a Kawhi and Kyle Lowry. Milwaukee, you have Giannis. And the rest of the guys are solid pieces. So, I mean, Philly, they have three all-star talent. So why can't they make a deep run?
Yeah,
and that's what makes this exciting.
Yeah, and you look at Boston, I thought Boston got a huge win the other night. And listen, you got 26 and 10 from Kyrie, you got 20 from Tatum and Horford. They went 19 of 39 from beyond the arc, right? But defensively, they forced New Orleans into 22 turnovers. So that doesn't hurt, and that's typically how you win come postseason, especially when the game slows down in the half-court offense. Lastly, on the Sixers and Fultz. At the end of the day, listen, I think Tatum is a superstar. I do. I can't pick on Fultz too much because there's not enough body of work. But I honestly, we know he's got some issues. We know he dealt with some injuries, but the timing of everything with his handlers, his agent, his representation, his circle coming out and saying what they are, and catching the Sixers off guard. At the end of the day, how bad does it look if they trade him? Because then you've admitted you've got major egg on your face, and that was a catastrophic mistake drafting this kid.
Yeah, it looks bad because you have a guy in Jason Tatum. That makes it even worse when you see a guy like Tatum step up last year in the playoffs doing what he did, and he's one of the rising stars in this league, at 19 or 20 years old. So it looks bad when you have that guy on the table. And even a guy like Lonzo Ball, who has shown some promise this year. So who knows if you get those two guys, how the situation is in Philly right now. But with Markelle, it's a sad situation. It definitely is a what if. What if none of these things happen with him physically or mentally? Where would this team be at now? But at this point, I think it's clear it's best for both parties to just separate. Markelle obviously it's a mental issue at this point. Seeing him struggle with his free throw shooting tactics and trying different ways to release the ball, it's tough to see. And so I think a change of scenery will maybe do him well, and just to do Philly well. Just say, you know what, let's wash our hands of this, and this was a mistake. This will probably go up in history as one of the biggest draft blunders in history, and that's something that they'll have to live with as a franchise.
Yeah, and I think also the other side, the flip side to that too, is you can't publicly come out and chastise the kid, right? Because what happens is now when you do that, any thought, teams are going to say, well, wait a second, he's already damaged goods. Why are we going to they're going to try to get fair or better or equal value back for this, so you're losing the leverage in that regard. And the second thing is, I've defended him. I wanted to at least see this kid for 25 to 50 games, but at the end of the day, if he can't even get run with the second unit, it's just a bad situation. I don't – listen, if they didn't get Jimmy Butler, I'm telling you, it would be a lot worse. The reaction, I think, would be you just treat it like the kid's not even on the roster right now.
That's pretty much what it is. He's an afterthought. Getting Jimmy just pretty much puts this in the back burner. And you see guys like Landry Shamet, Furkan Korkmaz getting more time and showing some things. And Markelle, just 2 years ago, was the top player in this draft class, according to most projections. So you're just left wondering, what happened? What's going on here? So I was like you, Q. I wanted to give him an opportunity. I said, you know what, let's see what he does with extended playing time. But it's not clicking. It's just not there. And confidence is everything in basketball. You're
absolutely right. Quickly to the Western Conference, it only took 20 games. And do we need 20 games to know that LeBron's running the show down there in Los Angeles?
No. And are we surprised with anything that's going on in LA?
No, we're not. We're not. He wanted to be Hollywood. He's a guy, he wants the ball in his hands all the time. right?
Mm-hmm.
So this
Yeah.
desire to play off the ball when he was talking about the new contract was a load of garbage. He wants to bring the ball up the floor. He wants to touch the ball all the time. And the fact, if these reports are true, they are. And Windhorst is a pretty credible guy. So if these reports are accurate, which I think they are, it doesn't shock me because as an all-time great, as much as he is a coach killer. He really is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he had a coach make the finals in David Blatt and then lose his job the following year. I don't know in what world that happened. So anytime LeBron goes anywhere, I know two things for sure. It's going to be a drama show,
and the coach
should be searching for his next situation.
Yeah,
that's just a fact. That's a fact.
Yeah,
that's a fact.
Let me before I let you get out of here, let me ask you about your Grizz.
Man, surprising me, that's for sure.
I think Dallas is more of a surprise, by the way.
Yes. Luka Doncic, Rick Carlisle, by the way, one of the best coaches in the league.
Agree.
Doing a great job. But Memphis, man, you look at it, you have an aging Marc Gasol, an aging Mike Conley coming off a major injury, and that's about it. I look at this roster with Shelvin Mack, Garrett Temple, Kyle Anderson. These are not names these aren't household names. And I was still shaky on the rookie Jaren Jackson, but Jaren Jackson is legitimate. Let me say that first and foremost. He's only 19 years old, and he's showing some things. He's one of the unicorn players out there in this league. But Mike Conley has come back healthy. Marc Gasol is showing some things on this last stretch of his career, and they're playing tough defense. You look at these numbers in the league; teams are putting up 120, 130 routinely, and if you play Memphis, you're gonna struggle to put up 90. So they're forcing teams to play a different style of basketball, and it's uncomfortable, and it's playing right into their hands. So it's sort of like that grit and grind era. You can call it grit and grind 2.0. It's not fun to watch. Let me tell you, Q. It's not a fun brand of basketball, but they're winning. JB Bickerstaff is doing a good job defensively. I still think in the playoffs, if they are to make that route offensively, you're going to see some things where they struggle, and it may be tough for them depending on the matchup. But right now, this team they're making life uncomfortable for teams.
I'll tell you, I haven't seen the Grizz play a ton of times, but when I have, I do like the kid Jackson, and obviously a little more of a rooting interest. He's a Jersey kid, and like you said, he's a young kid, but he's got a little reckless abandon to him as well. Like you can tell he's confident with the ball. He's confident when he plays, and as you said, that's huge.
Anytime opposing teams come in, you can see the big men are trying to test him and bully him, and he holds his own. He's not shying away, and you can only imagine a year of summer off-season training and getting used to the speed, getting stronger. This kid's going to be a beast. I saw him block, get a steal, do a spin move, put it behind his back, and lay it up. This is a 6'10" guy doing that. So he's fluid with his movements. He has the potential to be a great defensive player. His offensive game is still developing, but Jaren Jackson is definitely a one to look out for Memphis.
All right, my friend. Listen, always good to catch up. We will talk next week. Always appreciate it, and keep up the great work. And like I said, I would say keep the head down, keep the head up, but just
Yeah,
let me ask you, how many? Here's the big question is, how many suits? How many suits do you have in the closet as we speak?
I got to step it up a little bit. I'm not up to your level. I got about 6. I got about 6. Right.
And the shoes. Remember, the shoes make the man.
The shoes do make the man. I got to get your personal tailor.
All right.
I need somebody to hook me up. Hook me up.
I got you. I might have to send you down a care package.
Hey, I appreciate that. Hey, Porzingis will be back soon in due time. Don't forget it. Frank Ntilikina, Lance Thomas, hold it down.
We will talk next week, pal. Always appreciate it.
Take it easy.
All right, you got it. Jonathan Marshall down there, Fox 13 in Memphis, covering the NBA at Jonathan Marshall, Fox 13. Good stuff from him.